China and its cronies have repeatedly insisted over the past year and a half that the possibility of a laboratory leak in Wuhan is a conspiracy theory. This is a lie. As part of investigating this topic for my book, What Really Happened in Wuhan, we found official documents that show the Chinese government took concerns about a potential lab leak extremely seriously. So seriously, they said a lab leak involving virus research could place the whole of mankind in great danger. Mankind. This was the warning they included in their formal submission to the United Nations Biological Weapons Convention in 2011. There has only been one convention since then, they're every 5 years, and China's submission in 2016 had virtually no details at all. This document from 2011 states, accidental mistakes in biotech laboratories can place mankind in great danger. Synthetic biology in some civilian biotechnology research and applications may unintentionally give rise to new, highly hazardous man-made pathogens with unforeseeable consequences. This is so far from a conspiracy theory that China then suggests that laboratory controls should be improved right across the world. This is what they say. State parties should constantly tighten biosafety management, especially of virulent pathogens, in their laboratories and eliminate biosafety risks. China's declaration to this United Nations Convention begins by noting that modern biological sciences play an important role in helping mankind combat disease and improve health. But they then say, at the same time, the use of new kinds of biotechnology for hostile purposes poses a latent threat to human society, and they say this is growing. China even says that biotechnology research means there are difficulties complying with the Biological Weapons Convention itself. They note that since the previous conference in 2006, and this is a quote, there have been almost daily developments in biotechnology that is throwing up fresh challenges and opportunities for compliance with the convention. It actually says this twice. It says the dual-use nature of biotechnology enables it, on the one hand, to pose many challenges to full and strict compliance with the Biological Weapons Convention. The fact that China is admitting in its own submission to the United Nations Biological Weapons Convention that some of these virus research fields presented difficulties complying with the convention is enormously significant, and at the time it should have been a wake-up call to America, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the UK, anyone who was focused on this area of research. The existence of this extraordinary submission was first discovered by Mike Pompeo's chief China advisor, Miles Yu. When he was working from Pompeo, he came across a paper that featured the research fields China had spoken about in its submission. It wasn't the full document, it was just the subheadings, but they were concerning enough, and he raised it with Pompeo, and he also alerted the State Department's Arms Control and Verification Bureau, known as the AVC team. They were doing an investigation into the origins of COVID-19. He alerted them in December 2020, but neither Miles Yu nor the State Department were able to actually get hold of China's submission, its full submission, before the change of administration. And when Biden took office, the State Department investigation into the origins of COVID-19 was shut down. No reason was given. While I was investigating this topic for my book, which you can order on Amazon, we were able to locate, finally, this quite extraordinary document. And what it discusses is more terrifying than anything I have ever read. It discusses weaponizing specific viruses to target races. It is a shocking and grotesque area of bioresearch. This is official Chinese government submission to the United Nations. It states that the Human Genome Project has helped to reveal population-specific genetic variations across the genome. It then says it can also create the potential for biological weapons based on genetic differences between races. It says once hostile elements grasp that different ethnic groups harbour intrinsically different genetic susceptibilities to particular pathogens, they can put that knowledge into practice and create genetic weapons targeted at a racial group with a particular susceptibility. China's own declaration to the United Nations Convention also has a section titled The Increased Threat of Biological Weapons, where Beijing states that the rapid development of biological sciences may significantly, and this is a quote, may significantly increase the destructiveness of biological weapons. It says one way it may do so is by increasing the virulence of pathogenic microorganisms. Another way is by rendering traditional medicines and vaccines ineffective. A third way is by making the target population more susceptible to pathogenic microbes. It says RNA interference can inactivate specific genes in the body, inhibit expression of important bodily proteins, disrupt physiological function, and heighten the effects of a bioweapon attack. It then goes on to say a fourth way is by making biological attacks more stealthy. Foreign genes or viruses can be introduced into the target population asymptomatically by means of gene therapy vectors, enabling a biological weapon attack to be mounted covertly. This is truly horrifying and chilling areas of research to be discussing. And of course, it is important to note there is no evidence that COVID-19 was a biological weapon, and there is no evidence that China has carried out a biological attack. The significance of this document is that this is what the Chinese government included, a discussion about these research threats in its official submission to the United Nations Biological Weapons Convention as relevant issues that could impact on compliance with the convention moving forward. And as I said, this is the last detailed submission they made to the conference, seeing as they're only held every 5 years, and their document, their submission in 2016 was bare, was non-existent. Nothing in this document is more significant than China's serious concerns about a laboratory accident and the threat that this could pose to mankind. I spoke about this with David Asher. He's the former lead investigator of the US task force into the origins of the virus in the State Department, and I asked him just how significant this submission from China, an official Chinese government document, to the UN is.
Well, essentially laid out a roadmap of developments in biotechnology pertinent to the Biological Weapons Convention that the Chinese indicated as particularly salient. It wasn't clear from their declaration if this was to potential offensive use of synthetic biology and other techniques to convolution rather than evolution in the world of WMD, but it certainly appears to have sort of given a layout of what they felt were going to be the drivers of a more potent offense in the future decade related to biotechnology. And they all happen to be things that Chinese specifically pursued thereafter, which is very illuminating.
David Asher, in this document, China doesn't admit this is the research they're engaged in, but they do say that research in these fields could be a serious threat even to mankind. Does this indicate to you that they may have been engaging in this sort of research, or why do you think this document is so significant?
Yeah, let me just quickly review what they actually declared. Synthetic biology enabling the creation of man-made pathogens. Bingo, 100% in line with the Chinese declared capabilities. Genomics laying the foundation for pathogen transformation. Another area of gain-of-function research the Chinese aggressively pursued, just based on their public science, putting aside what we know from government sources. Systems biology further revealing population-specific genetic markers. Probably the most disturbing thing to note, that basically there could be a type of population targeting or ethnic targeting using biology, according to the Chinese. That doesn't mean they did it in the case of COVID-19 or anything else, but it definitely implied that they were fully aware that that is feasible and possible. They also talk about targeted drug delivery technology, making it easier to spread pathogens. If all the things that the Chinese worried about were happening in China and have been happening actually in line with this declaration, then we'd have very good reason to think that the Chinese were embarked on an outright biological warfare program, at least in terms of dual-use research development. I have to say, having looked at the last 10 years of developments in China, public and not so public, every one of these boxes is checked.
On a different topic, there have been calls from congressmen in the past few days to investigate the military games that took place in Wuhan in October 2019, just prior to the outbreak. At the time, at the start of the pandemic, we heard from athletes around the world that they believed they'd fallen sick with COVID-19. Do you think this area is important to investigate, and should Congress officially look at this?
Well, absolutely, there should be an investigation. I had some discussion with some folks in the Army Inspector General's office, just one brief or two brief conversations where they asked me what I felt the basis of this accusation by some of their soldiers who I guess had complained to the Army